the only show focused on stars' improvement strategies and the leaders who implement them. This is the Rising Stars with Rex Wallace Show, brought to you by Hyperlift.
If this is your first time to tune into our show, well, it's your lucky day. I want to welcome you to Rising Stars, the WTF edition. No, not that WTF. Today we're discussing what's the future of star ratings. Our future is unclear. In April, we received a final rule that wasn't final. It was like buying a book with most of the plot twist pages missing. So we find ourselves awaiting a second final rule. And we have so many questions and find ourselves anticipating and miserating over what the answers might be. So in today's episode, Mick and I wanted to invite someone on to co-anticipate and co-miserate over what the answers might be to all of our questions. We're going to play a game of WTF. What's the future of star ratings? Let's go. Joining me today is our co-host and the CEO of Hyperlift, Mick Twomey. Hello, Mick.
Hey, Rex. Thank you for having me as always. And I would like to add something. You know, we've talked to Melissa about being on this show with us for so long, and just one thing or another has always gotten in the way, but we finally pulled it off. So I'm very happy to be sitting here with the two of you guys today.
Me too. And speaking of that, our guest today is the Chief Consulting Officer for HealthMind, Melissa Smith. Melissa, number one, thanks for joining us. Yeah, thanks for being here today. And number two, for the one or two listeners out there who might not know who you are, can you give a brief introduction of yourself?
You bet. First off, I'm so glad to be here. As Mick said, we've talked about this for years, and it's miraculous in a lot of ways that one, we get to come together and do this as three people who love stars and have loved stars for a long time, and also do it on topics that we have lots of opinion and lots of judgment and subjectiveness. So I'm so super excited to be with you guys. For those who don't know me, I am the Chief Consulting Officer at HealthMind. That's my fancy title. My actual title that I love more than that is just Stars Geek Extraordinaire. I say that very proudly that I am one of the OGs in Stars. I was in Stars when Stars was in the demo, when we did not know what Stars was. Some of us, myself included, did not know what HEDIS and CAPS was, and we learned it all in the OG days with folks like you guys. So I live, eat, sleep, breathe stars. Our consulting practice does a lot of stars work, sometimes with you guys, sometimes around you guys. All of our customers and friends are on the line, and I'm really excited to talk about stars today with fellow like-minded OGs, and we're going to talk WTF and see what we can commiserate about. Let's commiserate.
Love it.
Let's do it. Let's play WTF. Yeah, I mean, this is not a typical episode, right? Typical episode, we're diving into some known issue and really talking about how to do it better or just helping people understand it more deeply. Here, yeah, we're really, projecting what the future might hold, right? Lots of things CMS is considering, but it's not clear exactly what they're going to do. A lot of the things they came out in the proposed rule with, and then they left them silent, unaddressed in the final rule, and they're still kind of hanging out there. Will likely be finalized later this year. So maybe we start there. So there's so CMS was clear, said there's a second final rule coming, right? So typically the proposed rule would come in December or January, right? So just want to make sure, if we have different thoughts there on when this second final rule might drop. Melissa, do you have what's your guess?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I personally think that we will see the second proposed rule drop by December 31st. And I'll tell you why I think we'll see that. So I think we'll see that because CMS has a legal obligation that they have to put forth their proposal before the measurement years begin. So if they've got any little loose ends that they'd like to deploy for 2024, that means they have to issue the proposed rulemaking before 1/1 of 24. So I think as we kind of talk through some of the loose ends this afternoon, I think we'll find a few loose ends that they might like to put into 2024 for effective dates. And if they want to do that, they've got to get it out in December. And they don't have to finalize it by December, but they have to propose it in December. And I think there's a few things that they may want to propose. Just best guess. What do you guys think?
I mean, it seems to me like, it came out at least a lot of the things that we're talking about came out last December, right? While we were at at Masterclass. And so they finalized half of it, but there's still some big ones out there, QI probably most notably, but it just feels like this is not something that you can drag on for too much longer. So I agree with you. I mean, at least I hope it's out before the end of the year.
What do you think, Rex?
Yeah, my I have not thought about the concept of a second proposed rule. I guess my thought is that there will be a second final rule that'll come. I think it'll be before December, but because I thought they said that nothing in there at least would be nothing not addressed yet would happen before 1/1/25. But there's always something, right? So who knows? There definitely could be another proposed rule. There's been some discussions about could the second final rule drop as soon as August, in sort of in sync with maybe the first plan preview and the WestEp memos, which should happen any day, right? I don't know that it'll be that early, but I'm guessing more like December. But yeah, can't wait to see, right?
It's pretty tough. What seems to me to be the most interesting, and a lot of you guys know I really do wear the badge of Stars Geek Extraordinaire pretty proudly. I'm willing to read every morning. I'm willing to hop up and figure out what's going on in DC and what came out. One of the most interesting things to me in the last couple of weeks is every morning, now that all of our both sides of Congress, all of our lawmakers know that 50% of our Medicare beneficiaries are sitting in Medicare Advantage, now all of our lawmakers are just hawking all over Medicare. Every day there's a new rule about something bubbling out of DC. We've had price transparency, prior auth, we've had PBMs, we've had more DIR around the IRA. I mean, we could keep throwing these silly acronyms out, but it's really every day there's something new coming out. I bring that up because about 2 weeks ago, CMS released the fee-for-service proposed rule for 2024. Now, a lot of folks on our line might not realize that applies to us, but in Medicare Advantage, we start with a baseline that we have to cover everything that fee-for-service covers. That's a big deal in Stars because if we all of a sudden have to have upheaval in the baseline of coverage if that proposed rule passes, we've got some other things that CMS may want to introduce for 2024 on the MA and the Stars side to catch up and align with that. So I think we'll still see some more changes. And of course, let's remember, right? The three of us have been looking forward to do this for years. We remember the days pre-Trump administration when we had this group of former Obamacare executives that were willing to promulgate new rules and new provisions in Stars without all the advance notice. So they can always rescind this really early warning system and go back to the pre-Trump days because that's the administration we have. We're just one pen stroke away from that as well. So a lot of things to watch for folks that don't watch the rules pretty tightly. Don't just watch this one. Watch all of them. There's so many to watch right now.
There really are, and they kind of all converge right on MA right now. It feels like.
Yep. Everybody's looking for the election. Right.
So, if we look at the things in the things at least most in front of us, right? So the things from the proposed rule that are not yet final. So one of them, and probably one of the more impactful ones or more potentially disruptive ones, especially for MA plans that don't have a Medicaid line of business, 3 new proposed pharmacy measures, right? So 2 polypharmacy, 1 opioid, not easy measures, especially if you don't have a Medicaid population. These were originally proposed to come into play, sooner, and we thought they would be, starting to be measured in 2024. They were absent from the final rule, so likely to be pushed back to 25 at least. But Melissa, let's start with you on this one. So your thoughts on when the 3 pharmacy measures might come in? Will they all come in? Any changes to that? What are your thoughts?
Oh man, this is the scariest conversation to have, y'all, is to play crystal ball. I feel like I should have gone.
Recorded.
I figured that. Yeah, that's the worst part. Is I tried to do crystal balling without recording to chase this down. I should have gone to the Halloween store and bought a crystal ball to have in front of me and
we totally
held it up. Yeah, we need to remember that next time. All right, so Part D measures. All right, so I have a lot of ideas about this Part D stuff because, like you said, Rex, CMS has played around with adding Part D measures for a couple of years. Ooh, you got the Harry Potter wand
The Harry
in
Potter
yours.
wand, will that work?
Props.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, so we're stuck in a rough spot in this Part D space because we have not had a lot of new measure additions in the Part D world like we have on the Part C side. It was agonizing when they added MTM. It was similarly agonizing to add the one-weighted SUPD, and then we've just been spinning. No big changes to adherence, no big anything. So I throw that out because the complete stability for far too many years gives me a lot of worry that Part D is in general ripe for measure additions and measure changes. It's a little bit tough because 2024 will be the first year we see the Inflation Recovery Act or Inflation Reduction Act take effect. That's going to throw mass chaos into the entirety of Part D. So my gut is CMS will probably start phasing in some of those new measures, at least beginning in 25, but I don't think I see all three of them being added in 25. That's a lot of new measurement in a space that is already going to be in complete upheaval. Some of us, so a lot of you guys may or may not know, I actually started my career in MA on the Part D side. So wasn't a quality person. I'm not a clinician. I'm a business person. So I started on the Part D ops side. If I go back, a lot of those of us who have been in the Part D space see 24 as the beginning of a full Part D redesign. So I think just as likely as adding a bunch of star measures, CMS could actually come in and do more of the Part D operational redesign to get underneath these. And I think the market's going to tell us. I think for those of our friends that are on the line, everybody's pushing back. So whether it's a star measure or if it just comes in with other types of operational rigors and details, I think we'll start to see some change in 25. Certainly with some star measure. Look, Rex, you and I have talked about the national quality strategy for years. Substance abuse and opioid disorder has been on the national quality strategy for years. We don't have anything in Medicare Advantage. It is just a matter of time before we get some substance abuse and mental health stuck in stars somewhere. So I think they're coming, but I think it'll probably be a little bit slower than all three at once, and probably maybe 1 in 25, maybe. What do you guys think? I'm dying to compare notes on the crystal ball.
What do you think, Mick?
I mean, I don't have anything that would tell me to disagree with that. And frankly, I hope they come in more of a staged approach to allow, everybody to kind of begin to take it in, adjust to it, and not just get, the full slam all at once. I mean, that's a lot of change and a lot of different things to deal with all at once. So I hope that you're right in where it just starts to get staged in.
Yeah, and I'm probably wrong, right? I'll just say that up front, but but I just don't see a good enough reason for CMS not to roll them all in 25. Like I think they might. I think they'll all be in 27 stars with the weight of one. The reason I think I'm probably wrong is because these are pretty political measures. A lot of lobbyists, right? A lot of plans are pushing back heavily on these measures, but I think they fit into the whole health equity strategy where CMS is moving. I mean, when you think about their, taking the whole reward factor away and replacing it with a health equity index, like, they're not incenting plans on being good at anything other than social risk factors, really, right? And I think especially this opioid measure, like it feels like it fits into their future model of kind of where things are headed. So it's probably enough plans will push back to where it will be scaled, but I still think there's a good chance that they might that they will all three come into play in calendar year 2025.
Oh, okay. So you're going bold in your predictions. If we co-anticipate and commiserate together, the honest truth is they need to pass. We need people doing new types of important work in pharmacy, and what we have is not new types of important work. The 3 medication adherence measures that have been in the program for all 12 or 13 years that we've had it. I mean, that's a body of work that's important, but it's not the only body of work that's important. So You're right. They need to pass, whether they will or not. What I hear is the day that proposed rule came out in December around risk adjustment, that the planes swooped DC, and literally the city was inundated with the opinions of MA plans everywhere. I'm sure this is one of those topics. This will, as it comes down all the time. It won't be logic. It's going to be DC politics that bring us the answer, probably.
Totally agree, and that's one large reason why I think I'm probably wrong. But yeah, what maybe what should happen and what does happen are they're not always the same thing, right? So
yeah.
So all right, so the second one, so Mick, there's this little inconsequential change that's that they're talking about of changing the hold harmless provision for the improvement measure. What do you think about this? And do you want to describe kind of how it works now and what the change is proposed to do?
Yeah, sure. So effectively now, there are two, QI 5-weighted quality improvement measures, one in Part D, one in Part C. And essentially you get rated on kind of an aggregation of your Part C measures, your Part D measures, and how much did you improve or decline from one year to the next. And you, based on that calculation, you get a rating in both Part C and Part D. And if those ratings hurt you and your score is over 4 stars, then you don't have to use the QI measures in your calculation. And that can be a really big help for a lot of plans right now. And what they're proposing is they would take that hold harmless. So instead of, if you're 4 stars, you're held harmless, they would move it to 5 stars. And that would be the most significant, like in terms of QBP impact change that they've announced maybe ever. You look at, if you apply that rule to STARS 2023, 36% of contracts, of the 4-star contracts, wouldn't have gotten 4 stars. And CMS, they would have saved $1.8 billion just in that year alone. And so when you extrapolate that out, it makes sense, because CMS has said that they expect to save, when they did this whole announcement, they were going to save $25 billion. 19 of it was because of this QI thing. And so 19 billion over 10 years, pretty close to the 1.8 from that 1 year. So it makes, a ton of sense. But when you think about, you run numbers and see what the change of removing reward factor and bringing in HEI as the replacement, what that does to plans. I mean, essentially, you take away reward factor, 56 of the 57 contracts that got 5 stars in 23 wouldn't have gotten 5 stars. So, and HEI is not a full replacement, and a lot of times not even the same contracts. So I think that's going to hold relatively true. So effectively with that change, you're almost getting rid of 5 stars. To a degree, you can make a case that materially you're getting rid of 5 stars, which would mean when this QI change comes into place, everybody is going to be impacted by QI. So I just think it fundamentally changes the way we think about stars, the way we do the math, the way we consider where do we put improvements. Obviously, this is probably now very clear to everyone. I can talk for 100 years on this one. I'm very passionate about this. So I'll shut up and pass the baton here. But I definitely have some thoughts on this one.
What do you think, Melissa?
Oh man, what do I think? Okay, one, I think we could actually talk about this for a full episode or a full day.
100%.
So if we were sitting around, if we were just sitting around with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, there is no doubt we could talk about WTF on this one all day long. It's really tough because, Mick, you hit the nail on the head. This is an extreme moneymaker for CMS. It's an easy gift that CMS gave lots of plans to ease the concept in, and now it expends an immense amount of resources that, quite frankly, our taxpayers may not have forever as we think about balancing the trust fund. So, I think it passes. I don't think it passes just for 5-star plans, to be quite frank. And I'll tell you why. I don't think that. when you go back to the pre-COVID relief, I think everybody in MA kind of forgets that those glamorous days of the vast majority of our members and plans being 4 or more stars was just a gift of COVID EUC policy relief from CMS. So if we go back to the 4-star cycles before that, 2 of those years, there were 15-ish 5-star plans.
Yep.
2 of those star cycles, there were 20 5-star plans. I just don't imagine CMS is going to get that much appetite to limit this to less than 2 dozen plans. So I kind of think that we'll wind up with like 4.5 and 5-star plans. Again, crystal ball, I'm going to like disclaim. If I had my crystal ball in front of me, I would say I think we see it pass maybe for 4.5 and 5-star hold harmless. But I don't think there's a way for CMS to continue expending quality bonus payments, QBPs, when the only thing that got you there was a hold harmless on your improvement. If you don't improve, it's hard to reward you with the financial incentive intended for quality improvement. I think they're pretty justified in tightening the belt on this one a little bit. What do you think, Rex? Yeah.
Well, I mean, Rex, I'll just jump in real quick because I totally agree. I think it's going to end up being the 4.5. I think you have a lot of people that are going to be pushing back. You guys were talking about lobbyists, that kind of thing. I think you have a lot of plans that are going to be pushing back, and especially with 5 stars, you know, I think you're going to be under what you've seen before, Melissa, in that 15, 20. I think you're going to be lower than that. And, but, you know, while you can make a case for saving money, it does kind of maybe make sense for 4 stars. But that said, probably more importantly is it just really changes the way you have to think about the game all year long. And a lot of people, you know, when they're kind of pretty much guaranteed 4 stars, you don't have to think about QI necessarily as much. But going forward, I now think pretty much every plan out there has to have a much more robust strategy on how you attack QI.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. What do you think, Rex?
Yeah, I think I think 4.5 makes a lot of sense, and I think it may very well be 4.5. I'm gonna go with 5 just because of the money, right? Because I think CMS, I think 2 things. Number one, it's such a huge money saver for CMS, like you said. I think, you know, if you think about the reward factor going away, as powerful, as impactful, and disruptive as that is for our distribution of stars, it doesn't really save much money, right? I mean, the 4-star plans don't drop. The 4.5 drop to 4, but they still get the 5% QBP. The 5-star plans drop to 4.5, but you know, there's no financial difference between 5 and 4.5. So, and there's, you know, a little money being saved in the member experience weights and things like that. But I think this is a way for CMS to save a lot of money. And I think secondly, I think they justify it, and they mentioned this, but and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's something like, you know, if you look at 4 and 4.5 star plans, they only achieve 5 stars on, I don't know, a little less than half of the Part C measures and like less than a quarter of the Part D measures, something like that, right? So there's a lot of room for improvement still for 4 and 4.5 star plans. They are not hitting 5 stars on enough measures, on all the measures, obviously. And I think if you put yourself in CMS's shoes and you're writing the rules for this program, and someone is not improving, they are kind of steadily at 4 stars, but they're not improving, and the name of this game is improvement. I mean, why hold them harmless, right? If there's this much money at stake, if I'm trying to save money, this is a place where I think I dig in if I'm CMS. Plans are going to push back like crazy. I would if I was a plan, obviously. Hey, I'm performing at 4 stars. I'm hitting 4 stars on so many measures. Why am I being penalized? You know, because you're not improving. I mean, if I'm CMS, I could see that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, I used to be in a plan, so I am proud that our executive team, when I was on the plan side as a star leader, both as a Part C star leader and a Part D star leader, and then a joint star leader, our executives fought everything. We would go after whatever we could, anything we could have a leg to stand on. I think you're right. This is definitely going to be an interesting pushback. You know, the other thing that I find fascinating about this, Mick, you just said it. This is the one proposed change that saves CMS the most money should it pass. What that should mean to plans is watch this change. It's the most impactful one of the bunch. The funny thing about that, I was with a group of about maybe 35 or 40 CEOs earlier this spring. We were talking about stars, talking about the changes, right? Because y'all know I don't believe stars is a thing. My whole MO is stars should be the measured output of good business processes by every department in the organization, not just something that a team does all by themselves.
Yeah.
So we're talking to these CEOs. Again, this within the lens, this is the most impactful change CMS has proposed. I start talking about all the changes. One, this group of 35 or 40 CEOs didn't even know most of the actual changes that were passed. When we got to this one, their eyes all glazed over because the measures are mathematically complex. The measures themselves are mathematically complex. And then if you think about the math path, which I know has sort of dirty, some people love it, some people hate it, right? But the reality is MA is a data game and a math game, stars is a data game and a math game. The star ratings math path is a second math puzzle on top of the measure math puzzle. Not a single one had the appetite to listen to anything about what the change was, why it mattered, how to win, how you could lose. I think it's going to be it's an interesting challenge of what do you do if you're the operator and you're looking at executives with their eyes glazed over, worried about OIG and risk adjustment and 24 fee for service payment changes.
Right.
How do you get them to pay enough attention to this complex math path if you're just the stars team person trying to toot the horn or wave the flag? This is a steep task for our stars friends in
It
the
is,
nation.
but you have to get them to listen, get them to understand. We were shocked a couple of years ago when Tukey came out, and we got involved in more leadership team discussions with Tukey than we ever had, by a long shot. And then this year, all of this comes out, and it's like this tidal wave of impacts that we ended up, changing a lot of the stuff that we do because this is coming down the pipe. Some of it is already guaranteed for sure, but I think QI, like you said, Melissa, it's the biggest cost savers, so it is coming down the pipe. There could be some variance, maybe it's 4.5, but this is coming. And so we've been invited to talk to more, or requested to talk to more leadership teams about this than by Tukey, probably twice as many, because there are a lot of complicated pieces here. And the math, you can explain the math, but it's very different to explain the math at a conceptual level than lay out like what it's going to do to your contract or what it would have done in STARS 2023 to help, kind of put some kind of meat on that so you really understand. And I think the reality is you have all this stuff that came out, reward factor, all the stuff that got actually finalized. And I think most plans have been focused on that stuff, knowing it's real and there. And this one's not real and there formally yet. And to your point, it's pretty complicated, the details of it. So it doesn't surprise me at all that a lot of those CEOs didn't hear about it. But this is going to be impactful for everyone. So I think this is one of those things that absolutely needs to get raised. First, you need to have clear understanding on the ground, about what this is doing, how to impact it, how to prepare for it. But then you've got to raise it up because this has the potential to change a lot of scores in the near term.
Yep. Okay. Can I throw a provocative idea in there? I told you guys, I'm really sad we're not doing this, like with the camera sitting on top of us, like sitting around a coffee chat, like a real coffee chat. I mean, here's a funny thing. There's a lot of plans that sort of hit their own personally chosen plateau by skipping the things that the health equity index is going to measure. They bounced up against language barriers, cultural barriers. They bounced up against low income or socioeconomically challenged neighborhoods and providers and communities in their contracts. The funny thing about this is that I think we could see some funky extra improvement as folks work on earning the health equity index, because they're going to be tapping into those members that they formerly thought were above their self-imposed plateau. And so this may get a little bit easier. As a lot of you guys know, I think CMS is pretty magical in the interrelatedness with which they've designed this program. I think the health equity index is going to force us into that top bucket that's going to keep us going up this improvement path. It could be very natural for plans that are working stars in the real triple aim way. of improving access, not just CAP scores, improving care, and reducing cost to bend the actuarial trajectory, not just banging out a bunch of process trainings and stuff. This could actually be a really good win-win to re-anchor them on the right thing, right next best right step.
Yeah, and if you're doing those next best right things, is if your goal is to improve your health equity index, and that's why you're going after that. Reality is the double dip is going to also have a positive impact on your QI, and you typically don't have to move a measure as much to get significant improvement on QI as you do to get to that next star rating. So that little bit of effort that you might do to help on some of the social risk factors, that kind of thing, could actually make a really positive impact on your QI scores, which at this day and age would be a fantastic impact to help counterbalance some of this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Melissa, what you said about the changes to health equity index and the introduction of social risk factor measures and things like that, it's going to, because I think the big problem with most plans is they have this segment of members they've been unable to reach or engage, and it's because of those members, because they have these kind of challenges and disparities, right? And the plans have not had to necessarily address them as aggressively as they needed to, and they've been able to still score high on their overall score without it, and now they're going to have to, and which is totally the right thing to do for so many reasons. But it is going to, one benefit is, I totally agree, it's going to, it's going to cause more improvement than we've seen in a while, and Mick, it's going to change the thresholds for the QI measures, and reward factor, and who, right, everything kind of.
Yeah, but who cares about reward factor anymore?
Going away, right? Member experience and reward factor, right? Yeah.
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah, we're going to see all kinds of changes on those reward factor thresholds for a little bit, until this plays out.
Yeah,
I'm still excited for when excited may be the wrong word, to see what the reward factor thresholds end up being in 24.
You're the only one that's excited about that.
Yeah, that's probably fair. But I do get excited about it. But I think it'll be interesting to see how much the Tukey overall impacts that reward factor, because depending on what you're counting on, that could be a very different number for you. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Yep, I totally agree. Well, and if you guys think about it, we still have a couple hundred new plans that have not even entered the cut point calculations and star ratings mix, the clusters.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about all that we've been trying to do and project and co-anticipate together or commiserate together, you think about what do we do when we've got 200 more plans, and that's like 25% of the volume of extra data points flowing into the math. It's going to be just I think a couple of years ago, one of us coined the term cut point chaos, and I think it's going to be a lot of mathematical chaos, and just a good moment to re-anchor into doing the right things for the right reasons and the right way, instead of replicating tips and tricks of your next door neighbor or the plan down the street like that. A lot of folks just did for years and succeeded. It's a time for fresh thinking.
It really is.
Yeah, and you bring up the cut point chaos. I wonder, how much does Tukey negate, or at least temper some of the resulting chaos of those big changes? It's just harder to move cut points significantly with Tukey in here, right? And so, actually, with that, Rex, does it make sense to move to guardrails, or is there something else you want to touch on right now?
Let's do, yeah, and maybe we'll kind of do rapid fire through these next few. They'll be shorter, because those two are the biggest. But yeah, let's focus on guardrails. So the removal of guardrails that just came into play, actually, right? So yeah, Mick, you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean, I think my take is relatively straightforward, simple, maybe. But I've always thought guardrails and Tukey were kind of belt and suspenders. Reality is, for you to make any kind of significant, more than 5-point move on a measure while Tukey's in place, there has to be just a fundamental shift in the market. You have to see a ton of plans making real moves. So I think kind of Tukey at its core, the whole reason that it exists, will fundamentally kind of takes care of the need of guardrails. But I guess we'll see. But to me, it just seems like a belt and suspenders approach right now. But
So
what do you guys think?
you think they'll be removed for measurement year 2025?
I don't know if I think they will or they won't, but I will say if they are or if they don't, I don't think it's going to have much of an impact.
That
Either
is
way.
that is not the right answer. You're not playing the game right. It's okay though. No.
Thanks, man.
But
Show
yeah,
me
you
how to
think
play the game, Rex.
they're unneeded and they're gonna go away right at some point. You're saying, yeah,
I
because
think.
of Tukey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Melissa, what do you think?
You guys are probably right. I will tell you what I wish were the case. I wish CMS would leave the guardrails in because, Rex, you and I have both been star leaders of a plan. It's really hard to plan a strategy when you have no idea what the upper and lower limits are. I think you were in a nonprofit plan. I happened to be in a national for-profit plan when we were doing our star leader work. When CMS pulled out the predetermined 4-star threshold in the mid 2010s, it was like 2014, 15, 16 when they pulled those out, it really took away at least one little bit of certainty that we had to play with. If you're running a large corporate organization, it's really hard to operate without knowing at least an upper and lower risk factor limit on 5% of your revenue. So you guys well may be right, but I wish they would leave those guardrails in just to help those plans that really know they have to have the 5%. Then they know exactly how high they have to strive to guarantee they can get to 5 because those guardrails just help out a little bit. So man, that would be hard for that's tough. All of our friends who are out trying to run STARS programs and run MA plans just need a little bit of a gift. That'd be nice to give of a bone to throw them.
And that's definitely the way they were intended, right? To create that predictability and to give some more confidence around how much the cut points might move. I think, I know in the final rule, CMS said, I think they said, Mick, kind of what you're saying, right? That because of Tukey, we don't think we really need them anymore. But also, I know they're not perfect, and they could be better, right? But the way they're designed now, they don't allow for downward movement either, right? So, and there was at least one case, gosh, was it osteoporosis? I forget the measure, in 23 stars where it all went down. Every threshold went down 5 points, and it should have gone down more and been more favorable for plans, but it wasn't allowed to because of the guardrail. So I think the way they're designed now, they're not perfect. And I say perfect, I guess they're perfect in their definition. They prevent upward and downward movement, but if I'm a plan, I would love them to allow for downward movement. If the whole industry goes down, why not let the measure go down? But you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? So
but that's kind of what I'm talking about. I think what it's going to take to move things more than 5 points in a Tukey environment, you have to see a massive shift across the industry. And it's very likely, it's just as likely, if not more, to see that shift being downward because of something impacting it. And in that case, a guardrail would artificially keep you at a lower star rating. So I hear what you're saying, Melissa, and I got to tell you, when you were saying it, I'm like, maybe I'm thinking about this maybe the wrong way. But I mean, just from a math standpoint, I mean, I'm as much of a math path as there is out there, just like you. And to me, Tukey feels like it will correct that piece. And I feel you on, just knowing that we at least have to get to here. But I think that the Tukey actually has some protections in there as well that the guardrails somewhat take away.
Yep. It's really kind of funny. Rex, you started this as a WTF. What's the future? The funny thing about that is let's look forward, right? If the next final rule comes out, the earliest these things could take effect would be measurement year 2025 at this point. By 25, the ONC's IT interoperability rule that was just proposed in March, April, I've lost track of my time a little bit, that proposed rule would take effect. Imagine what that does on all those Part C 5 stars. it could completely flip the entirety of the structure of who's a winner and who's a loser if you're in an organization that's on the leading edge with high interoperability versus the laggard end where you kind of are doing things the way you did them in the past and you're just waiting for things to happen. Like there's so many funky dynamics in the calculus here of what do you want CMS to do and why that's why I really think we could truly talk for days. We could talk for days about how you develop that thought model of what you would even lobby CMS to do, pass it or skip it.
And how they all play together. I mean, the member experience, Wade's jump into 4, caused this mass change in our distribution of stars, right? Where except for the COVID year, we'd never had, like you said, more than 21 5-star plans. And now we have 57 in a non-COVID impact, except for the HOS measures were impacted by COVID relief, but nothing else was, so not really material.
No.
But we also had, I think, 41 plans that scored below 3. So, for the first time in a long time. So, and it was that, huge weight change it wasn't necessarily a change in performance, but all of a sudden these measures are a lot more important. So if you're not good at them, then you are getting big time penalized and fall below 3 stars. If you're really good at them, hey, here's your 5-star this year because, the math changed and you, in a good way for plans who were good at member experience and deserved every penny of it. But the math change is what drove a lot of the 5-star performance this year. So yeah, you're right, Melissa. All these changes they'll change the distribution in ways we don't even anticipate right now. I know. Okay, another quick one. MRP. That one wasn't quick actually, but I thought these would be quick. So MRP, so medication reconciliation post discharge. It's counting twice right now on stars. It's a sub measure of TRC. Transitions of care. It's also a standalone measure. We thought it would go away as a standalone measure. It didn't. It hasn't. It's taken out of the final rule, so it's not going to for for the next period anyway. So yeah, Melissa, what do you think here? When
no, you
is it going to be
take
retired?
this one first. Okay, you take this one first. We're gonna flip the script. We're gonna
okay.
flip the question back to a question. What do you think, Rex?
Okay, I thought I was the host, but okay. All right.
He was held harmless.
Right. Yeah. I don't really understand why it hasn't been removed already, right?
I agree.
I don't like some of
100%.
these things that weren't finalized, you can kind of connect dots because of the lobbyists or the number of plans that pushed back because of the massive impact. I don't really understand why this one didn't come out yet. So yeah, I have no reason to think it won't come out for 25 stars unless there's some codification error that CMS made and where they can't. But yeah, I think it'll definitely, I don't know why it's counting twice now, and I think it'll come out. What do you think?
Same, 100%. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. I mean, this is one of those things, if you go back to the history of how they proposed adding TRC to stars, they were abundantly clear. There was no confusion. So I think this was a gift. I think there had to have been some of the PBM owners and some of the nationals that really leaned into MedRex and got a little bit of a gift. And of course, we see that every year. This is a political game, not just a technical game. No doubt that's how that made it in.
Okay, and then there's 2 more very similar ones. I'm going to roll them together, actually. So it's the return of measures that have been taken off of stars. So first is the Care for Older Adults Functional Status Assessment measure. And then along with that are the 2 triple weight HOS measures, improving or maintaining physical health, improving or maintaining mental health. They've all been on display. Some of them may have been included in other regulations, but not necessarily in the final rule. So a lot of plans aren't sure when they're coming back. So, Melissa, what do you think on when these measures are coming back?
All right, so let's take the easy one first. Let's take the triple weighted HOS measures first. They're coming back because they've been codified for years. I mean, everybody forgets we had a party the day that CMS retired those measures. Every STARS person I know, didn't you? Like, we cracked out the wine and the party favors, and like it was a party when those came out. Those are back. Those are back in a total of 120 days. They're codified. So they're coming back for 1 year as a one-weighted set of one-weighted measures, and then they'll be triple weighted for measurement year 2025. I hope people are getting ready for them with, whole person care. It's everything CMS put in the fee for service proposed rule is real health support, not just a few cancer screenings and a few chronic condition measures. I think this is going to be a really big deal that the HOS measures are back. Um, it's the area of measurement I see the least activity in, quite frankly. I don't know about you guys, but sadly, I still see the least activity. So those are back. The other one, the Care for Older Adults Functional Status Assessment, I'm going to take a flip side, and I'm going to say I don't think that one ever comes back because they proposed it coming back without it being an ECDS format. CMS and NCQA are in lockstep. They're not going to bring any new measures in. They're not digital quality, digital measures. And now they're talking about retiring the Care for Older Adults pain assessment measure for other substantive changes. I think they pull them all out and they do some magic and they bring them all back together in an ECDS format. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think agree on, and I think those COA measures. I mean, they've said, we think they should apply to all populations and not just DSNPs too, right? So, yeah, I totally agree on COA FSA. I think it'll, if and when it comes back, it'll be kind of reconfigured like those other two measures are being. And yeah, totally agree on I know the two triple weight HOS measures were on last year's survey, on this year's survey, so they're definitely back already. A lot of plans are just unclear there. Mick, any other thoughts?
I'll echo what both of you said, but the fact that you guys are seeing the least amount of effort going into those new ultimately triple weighted HOS measures. I mean, frankly, you look back, those were the measures that we've seen the least amount of effort going into as long as I can remember, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, they're triple weighted, so they can leave a mark, but I think people shied away from them because they were hard to impact, and they were hard to impact near term. With the 2-year kind of tail, on it, it's stuff you do today isn't going to show up, in this next star rating. And I think that combined with kind of a bit of a nebulous, kind of hard to nail down, it's not just go, file this claim, do this activity. So it does change the math, to new or returning 3-weight HOS measures, but it'll be interesting to see, how everybody reacts to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Rex, the one you didn't ask about was the Care for Older Adults Med Review measure, which is kind of sitting out there like in that little triumvirate of Care for Older Adults measures. That's the one they didn't have a lot to say about. It's kind of funny to imagine in the WTF world, what's the future of COA Med Review with the proposal for the expanded MTM eligibility criteria? It's hard to imagine if that COA Med Review picks up any new members that aren't going to be in the expanded MTM measure. And so why do we have a C and a D measure measuring largely the same thing like SPC and SCPD? Or can we get, the bodies that be to work together and figure out, is it the COA Med Review that gets lumped in and reimagined, or is it the expanded MTM? Does that one happen? I mean, what do you guys think? Does the expanded MTM eligibility happen?
That's a big conversation with a lot of our clients, I know. Right, because it's not much of it stays a 1-weight stars measure, but you're talking about a big cost on a lot more members. And yeah, I think it does. I think it does. I think it does happen. I don't know if it happens in 25, but I do think it happens pretty much as scripted so far. Mick, you have thoughts on?
These are kind of more away from the stars math and more in y'all's lane, so I would never counter anything that you guys say on such things.
Yeah.
Although I will say, Mick, you guys are mathematical wizards at Hyperlift. You can imagine there's a pretty easy math path that instead of calling MTM a 5-star must-get measure, you can drop that like a lot of plans did OMW and let that one hang out as a 1- or 2-star measure. And again, the math is going to be kind of funky. Do you spend a whole lot for a 1-weighted measure, or do you let the other math kind of work around it? A lot of business decisions. I get asked all along, what's the right decision? People kind of forget the right decision is what a group of business leaders in a plan agree is their business decision, because there is no one right or wrong answer here. It's an amalgamation of a lot of carefully made choices versus following predefined must-follow paths, I think.
It's a case-by-case scenario for sure.
Yeah, and Mick, you said earlier, like, I think you've got to understand this at the ground level, right? Because Melissa, you were saying executives don't necessarily get it. You have to understand, and you have to anticipate, the impact of these changes beyond what's on paper, because that MTM change, I know some of our clients at least are concerned about not just the additional cost, or if I don't perform on this one weight stars measure, but they're concerned, if I don't perform on it now, am I at risk of a program audit fell on in this area, and then does that come back and hurt me in stars somehow, and like what's the impact to that? So yeah, there's so many ramifications to these things, which leads us into our kind of final stretch here. What do people need to do? So the people, our listeners, predominantly quality stars leaders sitting in the chair at the health plan making these decisions. What do they need to do? Mick, do you want to start? What are your thoughts there?
Sure, I'll start one. Again, we're our focus is always on how do you optimize that star rating, and specifically the math path, as we've all talked about. Each math path is going to be unique, but the math path has fundamentally changed this year with a reward factor that so many of our high performing plans count on 30, 40 basis points every year. That going away, with potentially QI now becoming potentially harmful to virtually all plans. Um, Biggest thing that we're talking about doing differently right now is putting a much bigger focus, although hopefully you've already had a good focus on QI, but doing things to where you can get ahead of QI on throughout the year, as opposed to waiting towards Q3, Q4 to start really looking how it's playing out. One way that we're working with plans to do this is creating this glide path. To understand, all right, if this is what we're projecting your QI significant improvement threshold to be, based on your historical trends, where do you need to be each month to be on track for that? And let's highlight things where you've got measures that are behind, because one, it's a good way to look at this, keeps tabs on performance throughout the year, highlights things early, where you still have a chance to actually do something about it. So I think just understanding how the QI math works, and then applying it in different ways throughout the year to try to stay ahead of it. I think that would ultimately pay dividends for the vast majority of plans out there.
Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah. So one, I can't double exclamation point, Mick, that enough. I mean, there's no way to do this flying by the seat of your pants.
Right.
Gut ideas alone's not enough. Directional work's not enough. This is a math game.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll with that as the must-have foundation, I'll try to offer three other ideas. I would say get moving. It's hard. You guys are seeing me. I'm sitting in my home office, right? I've got my dogs at my feet. I've got a spouse working upstairs. It's hard to get momentum when you're sitting in your calm space, but we can't over design. We can't overthink. We've got to give up the idea of perfection. We've got to get things moving with our members in the community. This means get out and see them, see your providers, get out of your home office, and really be intentional to know the problems that show up in math and make your math problem. Know the problems, know the words of the problems, know the names of the doctors and their problems, so you can then solve it intentionally, knowing that you're good enough for success, even if you're not going to be perfect. So that's my one, get moving. I would say I've got two other things that come to mind if our friends are feeling a little bit uncomfortable amidst the sea of discomfort. I've been shocked in the years of COVID how many of our OGs have left MA and left stars. There's not a lot of folks that know how to do stars work in the environment of uncertainty and unknowns. We don't have a lot of teaching going on. We don't have enough learning going on. We don't have enough stars people out teaching their coworkers details and educating like we did when we were in offices. So really getting out there and helping each person know the new needs of stars, know what three things that they need to be doing towards the star goal. So you've got every person supporting stars, not just the star manager trying to do it alone on their own back. That's a really big deal. And last but not least, this is the hardest thing. If you run your math like Mick was describing and things don't look good, don't gloss over it. Be bold and tell the truth. Don't just hide your reality under the auspices of green lights or reports that show you're going to hit 4. Tell the truth. Be bold. John Willis was one of our other STARS OGs on our team, just wrote a big blog about finding your STARS community to build strength in numbers. Find somebody to help you put voice to the struggle and escalate the risk so that your leaders don't get surprised when plan preview hits, because there's nothing worse than a plan preview that's different than the reports you put out. So be bold, my friends. We've all been there. Yep, we've all been there. So what would you do?
Okay, all right. So one more thing. The other thing that I would just, especially right now this year, probably more than ever before, you got to communicate up, because these changes, we went and did all the scenarios to say, all right, if this had happened in STARS 2023, what would it have done to you? For some contracts, it didn't crush them, right? They went down 10 basis points with everything applied. But others went from like a 4.95 to a 3.97. I mean, if you're getting hit multiple ways on this stuff, it leaves a mark, and that's with no performance change whatsoever. And so those are the kinds of things that if you are one of those plans getting really impacted, make sure that you're communicating that upward to help kind of cushion that blow, kind of prepare them for it, but also to help get access to resources that you might need to be able to start counterbalancing this.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah. Did you have more, Melissa?
I was going to ask you. So what would you do? What would you do, Rex?
I mean, ditto to everything you guys said, and just to not, duplicate those things necessarily, I would maybe add in. I mean, I think two or three things. One is, and you touched on this, but you need to understand the impact of your plan, right? So you need to really dig in and understand all of these changes, proposed and final for right now, because we're in that magic time right now, right? I mean, later this week we anticipate first plan preview and the WestStat memos, which give us the final caps, stars, and rates. So, executive attention is higher in the next 60 days, definitely 75 days, right, between now and mid-October when stars drop publicly, than they are all year. So capitalize on that. So I would say understand the impact to your plan, and I'm mainly speaking to stars and quality leaders, right? I would say block off some time for yourself to really think through this stuff. Like, our calendars are crazy. I mean, all of ours are, and usually people at the health plans are even more so than ours. And I know mine is nuts. So block off a few hours to really study this and think through it and develop a plan. And then, Melissa, you touched on this, like we're in our home offices. And I think that is so underappreciated, the impact people can have when they're in person, right? So like I know we have some clients that are getting, even if they're remote, they're getting together in person. Either they did in July for like a mid-year kind of course correction meeting, or in August after preview comes out, and in a Q4 and a calendar year 2024 strategy meeting. So I think you need to spend some time alone first and then come together in person, ideally, because engagement is limited when we're on phones. I mean, when we're like this, I feel like we're all in the same room, but most of the Zoom calls or Teams calls with health plans are not like this. We're not all on video. People are on mute. You don't even know if they're listening. Yep. The engagement is not there. So get together in person if at all possible for a strategy session. And then, I can't overemphasize what, Mick said as far as managing up, right? Like, I think, and Melissa, you touched on this as far as making sure people know, but I think the key words we use are, shared understanding. So making sure that the key people around you, up, down, and around the cross-functional measure owners and partners, have a shared understanding of what they need to be doing, how we're going to mitigate the risk from these things that we're talking about that are coming full force at us and going to make it much harder to be, going to make it virtually impossible to be 5 and really hard to be 4.5, in the future. So yeah, it's a lot. Any last words? I know that was a pretty that was a good episode.
Yeah, I'm gonna end with one thing. So
go.
So this is hard. The work's hard. These are hard jobs. That's why you see a lot of turnover. There's a small club of us who have done this work for years and find friendship and kinship among those who might be perceived as competitors, right? I mean, Rex, you and I have said this for years. People might think we compete with each other. We really don't compete with each other. Health plans have said this for years. They think they're competing with each other if they're plans down the street. They're not really competing with each other. It's a very big world. There's 330 million Americans in 50 states. There's room for all of us to have a culture of abundance where the winners hang out with winners and we rise together and make this fun. We're inspirational and helpful, and where the folks that are going to succeed will find a way to look for the bright side. And sometimes we get asked to do technical work. Sometimes we get asked to do culture change work. Sometimes we get asked to just do cheerleading. I think we've got to find some ways to band together in the next few months, because it's going to be the next couple of years are going to be a lot of uncertainty and discomfort. We're going to find our friends, find our fun, and inspire each other. So that's my word of uplifting ideas as we bring a WTF hour to a close.
It's a
well
team
said,
sport.
Melissa. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, it's a team sport, right? And it's we need to all band together for this, because there's a lot coming. Yeah, well, that's all right. That's WTF. So Melissa, thanks so much for joining. That was a whole lot of fun, and great dialogue. I mean, you guys have my brain definitely clicking on other alternative things that could be happening. So thanks for being here, and thanks listeners. Hopefully you got some value out of that, and we will talk next time. Thanks everyone.
All right, thanks.